Hello, friends. Did you come for the shiny thing? There it is. Look at that shiny thing. All right. This is a deep dive. This is the first video in the Dexplanation series. The Dexplanation series, where I dexplain my decks and my decisions. So this is where my decisions are explained. So sometimes decks can be salty, but here we want a different variety of salt. We want a pink Himalayan salt here, such as that. So we're going to show you how to make a spicy rack with some Himalayan sea salt. We already know how to do this. I've shown you guys this, but we're going to explain a deep dive why this is played this way, because I've seen a few other ones that came about just at the same time I put this one together. So it is my belief that we've all of us rack people that wanted to scam the rack. I think we all had the same idea at the same time. I think we're like, hey, we want to scam the scam. So we wanted to scam Rakdos Scam. And everybody I've talked to that's running this, not in my area because I'm the only one, but it seems to me that people running this wanted to scam Fury. And Fury being banned, well, let's just get into it. So I'm going to just explain why I run each of these. The deck is... in the description, you can find this deck. My deck lists on Moxfield, they change from time to time. You'll see lands, fetch lands switch. I like to keep my fetch lands always rotating to keep my opponents on their toes. So, Dread Canter. I run one Dread Canter down from 2. So, Dread Canter's 1 and a black for a 2/1. It has protection from white. So this, as you can imagine, guy dances in the sideboard quite a bit. Whenever an opponent discards a card, put a 1/1 counter on Turok, Dread Counter. When Turok enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, target opponent discards 2 cards. So he's going to bump himself. So if you cast him for 4, you are going to get essentially a 4/3, 4/4, which doesn't sound good, but then you're letting your opponent dump those cards. And then every time they, by the time he hits the battlefield, if you can pay him for 4, and he sticks around, he's going to get big. Plus, an undying effect on a Turok is good. Keeping him around's good, but not essential. So there's one Turok. And down from this, the Augur of Skulls, a card I love in here, and there has to be at least one. I played 3, 2, and 1. And it's just its casting costs, and then having to wait to sacrifice it to get that. That is what keeps me from keeping, 3 or even 2 in here, because honestly, it's just better to play if you have this to play, you don't have to wait. So if you have 3 mana, right, it's better to play something like Thoughtseize, Blackmail, something like that. It's way more effective, I found. But one of these is good, because if this sticks around, you can do its thing and then scam it back. Like turn 3, you can soak somebody for 4 cards. So that's why one of these is in there. And Orcish Bowmasters pretty much explains itself. This was the card that made this deck relevant, in my opinion. Orcish Bowmasters punishes card draw. It cleans up little creatures. We can hit our opponent with it to punish them for drawing cards. Shuts down a lot of things. I think this is just what black needed in the format. So I, of course, run 4 of these in here. And this is non-negatable here. 4 Orcish Bowmasters. And just to hold up the show a little bit, I was talking to a couple acquaintances of mine. We were talking about the Bowmasters. And people are going to be tempted, I think, to sell these. And maybe I'll eat my words here. But don't sell these. I have a feeling that these cards are going to be highly valuable in the future. Just because I don't see like a reprint of the Orcish Bowmasters. Maybe they'll do something, with the Stranger Things. Something like that. I could see them reprinting Orcish Bowmasters as like Goblin Sharpshooter or something, right? Orcish Sharpshooter, but not an Orcish Bowmaster. So if you have these, I think hold on to them. Especially these standard ones like this, these regular Bowmasters. I don't think the full art ones are going to be as valuable in the future, but that's just me. So we're running 4 Bowmasters. And again, you can scam back a Bowmaster as well, and you get a token for sacrificing. The token to sacrifice is absolutely great, especially when you're running the 3 copies of Liliana in here rather than just the 2. So, anyways, more explanations. I'm not explaining these things because every deck like this you see will run these cards. Now, this is where it gets a little different. So, a lot of the decks I see do not run 4 Dautai Voidwalkers, and some of them do not run Dautai Voidwalker at all, except maybe 2 in the sideboard. I think that is an error and a mistake, and I will tell you why. 2 reasons why I run this is because there's so much discard involved in this. It's not just about racking, it's about discarding. And when I was facing the the scam deck across the table in Paper Magic, which I was for a long time, and that's what made me get into making this deck. So, Dautai Voidwalker, you are creating another hand for yourself to pull from. And you can scam this back, and then you will have a 4/3, basically unblockable creature that sets a timer. Plus, with Fury, when you would bring Fury back and be able to sacrifice Dautai, choose an exiled card an opponent owns, the Void counter, and do Fury, using that for yourself was amazing. And it breaks my heart to know I'll never be able to sacrifice a Dautai and hit somebody with their own Fury. I'll never be able to, well, I'll explain it when I get to it. But it is sad. I didn't play Fury, but I got to be where I didn't mind playing against it, but I could see why it's a problem. So 4 Dautai Voidwalkers. Again, like the Bowmasters, this is a non-flexible slot. These stay in here all the time. Now, here's where things get interesting. Grief. To grief or not to grief? Let's say tomorrow grief gets banned. You know what? I'd probably add maybe 2 more Augur of Skulls and something else to remove something. And we'd have way more space because we could cut back on some of these scam spells. However, that being said, grief, we know what grief does. It's essentially getting a 4/3 on the board and having somebody discard 2 cards. So that's really good because right out of the gate, we can do that. So turn 1, if you have the mana down, you could say, do that. So exile a card, scam a grief, instantly pay the 2 life for Malakir Rebirth to bring this back, and then exile a card, exile another grief. So that's a huge discard. So you're going to have turn 1, you have a 4/3 on the board if you use, not dead after all, not necessarily Malakir Rebirth. That 4/3 turn 1, plus you've had him discard 3 cards. That's brutal. Not to mention on turn 2, well, we'll get into it. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. I want to do this properly. So, with grief, we want to get this thing out of our hands as quick as possible. That's our plan with this. And that's it for our creature base right there. Just go back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 creatures. And sometimes there's just 8 creatures. Sometimes we really, really slim that down, depending, especially when we were going against Fury. So now let's just talk about our non-creature spells. Here's our scam spells. We're just running 1 Malakir Rebirth because it's slow land. We don't like tap land. And it's also, we're paying life. So we don't want to get too crazy with paying life here. Plus, we want to scam something back to get that 1/1 counter, because this deck is aggressive at its heart. It likes to attack, especially with things like the Dautai Voidwalker, which can't be blocked. So if you scam back the Dautai, like I said, you have an unblockable 4 attack power there that needs to be dealt with, so that's setting a timer. Heck, a couple of Dautais sets a timer. So we're running 2 not dead after alls. I could run 4 of these, and this is terrible. You guys are going to be like, but I cannot find not dead after all. I keep looking for it. I've even opened some packs, like there's got to be some in here, but they're not. They're not. I was able to find a couple of these ones at my game store, and I just got the 2 foiled ones, but I would probably forego these Undying Malices for Not Dead after all. But as is, Undying Malice is okay. It's just not getting that Wicked Roll token. And that's okay. I mean, I like that purple and black with the black sleeves. I mean, if you want to be dapper about it, right? So, those are our scamming spells. We have 5 of these. And that's not very many, because we're not scamming back like things like Grief or like Fury. You know, it's not a full-on scam deck. It is an 8-rack deck. Coffee. All right, so let's look at some discard sorceries and instants. So we have Thoughtseize, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4. Running 4 of those. That is non-negotiable. 4 Thougeize, and yeah. Target player reveals the hand, choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card, you lose 2 life. So we're going to keep one of these aside, because we'll have to hold up the show. Inquisition of Kozilek. Now, to me, this is an underrated card, especially in Modern. Not necessarily in like something like Commander or something. But in Modern, where target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it with mana value 3 or less. That player discards that card. This is almost a free Thoughtseize in Modern, because a card that is 4 mana, that is played straight up, that you straight cast from your hand, a 4 mana casting cost card is kind of like a high casting cost in Modern. Especially me, most of the decks I come across very low to the ground. So this is getting rid of anything that anybody has. I've never come to the thing where somebody shows me their hand with Inquisition of Kozilek and I'm like, oh no, there's nothing there to... And here is an interesting one where I do not understand why people do not run more of these. Blackmail. So I got 2 in the main deck right now. Beautiful foil Onslaught versions from all the way back 21 years ago. Well, 22 years ago now, really. Yeah, 2002. I thought the Onslaught foils were like a great foil. Just love the way these look, especially the black. But target player reveals 3 cards from his or her hand, and you choose one of them. That player discards that card. So, let's say we scam. You know, we get some discard action. We've seen our opponent's hand. On turn 2, we play 2 blackmails. We can get 2 lands from our opponent, because they don't have to reveal 3 cards. They reveal their hand. So, it's 3 or less, right? So we can get their land cards. We play 2 blackmails on turn 2 and take their land cards from them too. That is terrible. So target player reveals 3 cards from his or her hand. You choose one of them. Does not say non-land. So important. And here we go. Now these also like unique to my build. That's why I wanted to make this video, because I do things different. And that's what we do here. We do not use blue at Lizards of the Toast, and we do things a little bit different. As different as we can get away with and be competitively viable. Right, Jeffrey? Oh, Jeffrey knows. Jeffrey never loved this deck much, did you, Jeffrey? In fact, he hated it when I put the Bowmasters in. But Jeffrey was the Rakdos scam. He was one of the big scam problems. Mr. Unlimited Budget, Jeffrey, right? So surgically extract something. We pay 2 life. We can do this turn 1. So if we Thoughtseize on turn 1, surgical extract something. And what are we going to surgically extract from our opponent? Oh my gosh, the Nessian Boar. This big problem creature that you oftentimes see in Modern. I am kidding. That's not what we're going to surgically extract. So we Thoughtseize, Rakdos scam turn 1. Pay 2 life. We've Thoughtseized Fury. Now we remove Fury, turn 1 from Rakdos Scam. And we can do the same thing for Grief. So just because Fury is no longer in Scam does not mean that it's not the only thing we want to get out of there. So this is great. So we're running 2 surgical extractions. Again, you could run 4 of them. And I have an Extirpate here. So Extirpate is surgical extraction with that rare split second ability there, which I find to be so interesting. Split second. So as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. So what this does, basically it does what Surgical Extraction does. But say for some reason Surgical Extraction was somehow countered, something happened. Extirpate can not have that happen to it. So Extirpate will happen. So that is quite a devilish dervish there, as it were. So to go into what is so destructive here. So turn one, let's say we play Scam Grief. Grief comes out, Grief comes back with the 1/1. We draw our card. Get our black mana. We'll say those are black mana, okay? So on turn two, we've done Grief, so we have a 4/3 untapped on turn two. At which point, we can play something like, where did it go? Where did it go? Where are you? Oh, right here. Okay. So we can play our Surgical Extraction after we've Thoughtseize. So think of that for a second. We can Thoughtseize, Extirpate, and Surgically Extract. Okay? Or we can blackmail, too. We can choose to blackmail as well. That, too, quite a devilish dervish, my friends. So if we blackmail right there, we can get those lands. Turn two, all of this happens. So this will just chop it up, man. And this wasn't just, it may have seemed that it started as something to simply deal with Rakdos Scam, but this eats up Mono Green Tron. And what absolutely stands no chance whatsoever against this deck, it's quite funny, is Hammer Time. Hammer Time, oh my god. Forget about it. I bring another deck with me for like playing with a group. There's a couple Hammer Time. So if I go up against... Oh, I got coffee on my hand. If I go up against Hammer Time... I won't even play this deck because it's pretty much like, because you just rip it apart. Similarly with Murktide, I love playing Is It Murktide because it gives me that kind of thrill of being able to extirpate and surgically extract the Murktide. So that's really fun. If turn 2 you can get rid of somebody's Murktide. So we have Funeral Charm. This is our instant. Choose one. Target player discards a card, or target creature gets +2 -1 until end of turn. Or target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn. All those things are pretty interesting. But with Funeral Charm, which, I run just one of these. However, you could run more because it is good. It's instant. When they draw a card, you can make them instantly discard the card. So that's good. I mean, it's a good card. It's just, for my current iteration, I've ran 2 Funeral Charms. I just find that for that slot, I like an extra extirpate. Does me better. So let's talk about a little removal here. We have 2 Fatal Push. Oftentimes we have 4 in here. 3, 4. It all depends what we're coming up against, really. You wouldn't necessarily run a Fatal Push if you were going against like a burn opponent or something. So we're running 2 of those. One of the best removals in black. And again, destroy target creature if its converted mana costs 2 or less. You know what? That's most things in Modern. So destroy that creature if it has converted mana costs 4 or less instead of a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. So with Liliana here, we're going to be sacrificing something anyways. We can Fatal Push after we sacrifice something. The players sacrifice something. We Fatal Push. We can send in something. We have the rack. So this seems pretty milquetoast as it is. It's a little different than the other builds, but you'll see why this was so effective. And this is what makes this a little strange and a little cheaper even than the other rack decks. So those Fatal Pushes, Liliana of the Veil. Not my favorite version of these, but it was cool to open these. Which one? No, I opened that one right there. So that was cool to open that, and I bought this one to go with it. But I like the original art. I think Liliana looks way cuter in the old artwork. But yeah, this is great. Each player discards a card to +1. -2, target player sacrifices a creature. And rarely to happen would be a separate all permanents. Target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanent in the pile of their choice. But yeah, pretty much just discard and creature removal. Running 2 of those because it's 3 mana. And we like to keep this deck kind of low to the ground. So here's where things get a little different. Okay, so here is our rack. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 racks. So sometimes this one finds its way into the sideboard. And that's why that one's different. And this one, this is easy to find these. So white border cards, easy to find. If they're searching, cards you're going to search for. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 2 Shrieking Afflictions. Essentially, it is the rack in enchantment form. A little different, but these are our damages. So 1, 2, get a couple of racks on the board with a Shrieking Affliction. That's a heck of a clock to deal with because that does some quick damage. So now here's the mana base. Now this is where things get real interesting. Now sometimes I run some Blood Crypts in here just to trick my opponent. But generally in my area, in the games I come against, Blood Moon is everywhere. Blood Moon is all around us all the time. So, this particular deck, in fact, I think if I played in other play groups, I would probably change up this mana base a little bit. Just because there'd probably be a lot less Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, and Alpine Moon, and things like that. A lot of Murktide Tron scam builds. So, that being said, coming across, Blood Moons really messes up things for Tron, and this disappears under the Blood Moon anyways. So we're running 1, 2, 3 Urza's Saga. I had 4 of these in here for a while. Now I had 2. I think 3 is the money spot for me. If I was playing in a tournament or something, I'd probably go 4 and change up this mana base. But this is my local stomper deck for if I'm going against scam decks or, certain kinds of decks. This isn't the deck I'd bring to a tournament, put it that way. But this is a unique deck and probably one of my favorite. And oddly enough, it's my most expensive deck, I think. So 3 Urza's Sagas. This is going to act as a tutor for our rack after it resolves. We get a little mana there. If for some reason we need to create the construct, we can do that, but it's going to be small. It's not going to be in other decks where you can build like a huge construct and do something really cool. So it's not going to really do that thing. You might get like a blocker or something, but then you can search up the rack. So essentially this acts as, in our deck, we have mana right here and the rack. So it's basically another rack in our deck. So we have 4 racks that we're running to compensate for the 1 Urza Saga that's not there. So this is where things get real simple. All right. So because of that mana problem we talked about with so many Blood Moons, and it's funny when I run the Blood Crypts in here, right? It's kind of funny. It just kind of tricks the opponent into thinking we're doing some Rakdos thing. But again, not something I do too much because most of the places I play this deck, everybody knows what I'm doing anyways. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 basic swamps. So Blood Moon is doing nothing with these, right? And we have Loch Thwain. You know how much I love to say Loch Thwain. Hey, Loch Thwain, hey, Loch Thwain, I think there's some underage kids up there at the bar, Loch Thwain. You need to do your job. Are you checking IDs, Loch Thwain? And that's a joke. See, Loch Thwain, every time I play this card, man, it's become like a thing where everybody's like, Loch Thwain. Because to me, it sounds like some guy that works in a bar, like back in the 80s, that like everybody wears like Stetson hats, like a cowboy, a shuffle and cut kind of place, you know what I mean? And yeah, just my humor, you know what I mean? But I digress. So we're running these, give us that card draw when we need it. And we have 1 Silent Clearing. Pay 1 life, add white or black. Who cares about the white?
Or 1, tap, sacrifice, silent clearing, draw a card. And look at that, a swamp on the back end. See how I did that? Isn't that cute? So yeah, 12 basic swamps. We have 4 non-basics in the form of silent clearing and the Lochthwains. And then we have our Urza Sagas there. So just to, I believe, let me see here. Just let me see how many mana sources we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Plus we have Malakir Rebirth bringing us in at 20. Again, little lighter than other rack decks, as you see. So let's talk about the unique sideboard here. All right, again, and I guess you want to see, there's our Wicked tokens, and we have the Orc Army. So those are in there as well. And of course, letting everybody know, oh, bad beats, buddy. All right, so our sideboard, we have our other Liliana here. We have 2 Fatal Pushes. Like I said, get rid of that removal. There's also a card that would be interesting in this deck that I think could serve a purpose, and that's Bump in the Night, which is Lava Spike, essentially, in black. So it deals 3 damage to target player. I think just player or planeswalker, but I don't, I can't take that to the bank. I don't know if it's player or planeswalker, but I think it's just like a black Lava Spike. So Bump in the Night, a playset of those, like in the form of like a lightning bolt type to the face of your opponent, would be awesome. But again, I don't have the room for it, what I'm doing. But if I was playing against different shells or whatever, pods, play groups. So I got Feed the Swarm. Now this is taking care of ley lines, because there's a lot of those I see too. So we have 3 Feed the Swarms. You could almost get away with running a playset of these in here. But again, life gain is a thing that we don't have much of in this deck. So we're looking to just rack people out, not looking to be paying life willy-nilly, being smart about how we pay life in this deck. That's what it's about. So we have that other blackmail here. We have this 9th edition foil. Target player reveals 3 cards from his or her hand, and you choose one of them. That player discards that card. So this is our 3rd blackmail. This really, really finds its way in the deck a lot. You see what I do with sideboarded cards? It's so I can find what I need for my sideboard. That's why you'll see in a lot of my decks, I'll have like 1 card that is different or like an alternate version. The reason is I'll sideboard that often. But then sometimes it's just for flavor too, because we're a spicy lad and we like flavor. So, oh, new light too. I hope it's working good. Let me get that. I wish we didn't have so much glare, but you know how it goes. So anyways, blackmail, just another one there to get rid of lands, essentially. Great card. Collective Brutality. Running 2 of these in here. I think this is a nice little toolbox. Gives us, we discard a card, true, but choose 1 or more. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose an instant or sorcery card from it. That player discards that card. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So that right there is money for us, because that 2 life is the difference between life and death. So going against something like burn or like aggressive strategies, Collective Brutality is something we're definitely going to want to get and get that life, and don't really matter too much about. Got that good -2/-2 creature removal. It just has everything we could look for, essentially. Like, you could almost it's like a little mini planeswalker sorcery, really. I just love that. So basically, yeah, pay the cost and then discard a couple cards, and you can get quite a lot of value out of Collective Brutality. Now, here's one you don't see too much in Modern anymore, but it did have its time. So you draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. So this one right here is great, because if you're going against Rakdos Scam or another 8-rack, which, when do you see those in the wild, am I right? This is going to keep you drawing cards. So it's going to be a lot harder to scam you if you're going to be using this. But again, that life. So generally these two find their way, into the deck together like that. So now here's some more artifacts, okay? And because of Urza's Saga, if we were running 4 of them, with 4 Urza's Sagas, it's like a playset plus 1 of each of these. So we have Void Mirror here, which this card is a card that I always thought should see more play. I mean, whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. That shuts down so much. So my buddy said, why would you play that in your decks when you run artifacts? I said, well, I don't run colorless lands to cast them. I said, whenever a player casts a spell, if no colored mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So that is way better to me than certain things. So that's not hurting us too much unless we're just casting something with Urza's Saga, which we're not really doing. There's not even a lot of things outside of Pithing Needle that, in the rack, of course. But I mean, with the rack, if we have to run our 1 Void Mirror, we can play it. So, I mean, all we have to do is avoid just using colorless mana to cast something. So this will really jam up other players way more than us. Just running 1 of those, or 4 of them if you can, consider the Saga. And then there's that other Extirpate, which this is such a great card in the deck. I love it, love it, love it. Because running the 2 Extirpates and the 2 Surgical Extractions, if you're going against a burn player, you can get rid of their win con by turn 3. You can essentially Boros Charm, gone. Monastery Swiftspear, gone. It's amazing. Amazing. So this really, really seals the deal. And not seeing it, I don't see anybody running this in this deck except me. So you saw it here at Lizards. I was one of the first guys to start running this again as a scam. And again, it could be better, but that is the sideboard, friends. And you could do things to this, certainly, and increase the cost. 1 Sheoldred or 2 wouldn't hurt in here, I think. Definitely a lot of things you could do differently. But again, even though this is a really expensive, seemingly boutique deck, this to me, it's not. I know it's not a casual deck, but this is a deck that I would say that even though it's not fun to play against, I play the deck for fun. So this is one I play for fun. And somebody asked, what do you play if you go to a tournament or something? Well, if I play for serious, as it were, where I'm not using dice and we're writing down things, for very serious things, mono red with green prowess is my go-to. And burn is my go-to. And we'll include, as we move forward here with this this new playlist, we'll have every deck I run and then some other ones. And I'll explain all the choices just like we did here and why I do the things I do. Why I do the things I do every day. All right, my coffee. Oh, no, I bet it got cold. It's lukewarm. Anyways, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. A couple shout outs. Cardboard Kiwi, great new channel. Go on there, like it, subscribe, watch the videos. Big Friendly Gamer, running this as well, a similar deck. So great minds think alike. We all tried to scam the rack, I think, right? But other than a few people, I don't see a lot of the rack. I mean, you don't even see it on the meta game. But it's fun, it's weird, it's effective, and it cracks the crab that was and is Recto Scam. So where are we at? 35? I think that's good. I want to keep these at 35. So you can always use a deck like that to extirpate things like this that we see all the time. Don't want that across the table from you, do you?